Did you know that there is a course called Women Who Lead where you get to spend hours with me learning how to make every interaction safe, logical, fun, and memorable? Doesn't that sound like a great way to spend some time? It will put tools in your tool belt that will change your trajectory. Give it a shot. Go to www.aimwithus.com and click on courses. I can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christy, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. It's another great day to have a great day. And I have my new friend Kash with me, who has already done me a ton of favors. She doesn't even realize that we may or may not talk about later. But I need you to follow this podcast. If you are not following this podcast, then you will not know that great things are happening. So do me that favor and share it with the world, because great people like Kash only come along once in a lifetime, and I don't want you to miss it. So let me introduce you to Kash Rocheleau. So she's like a lot of things. She is a CEO and she is in favor of women making great strides, but she's also a wife of 15 years. She has 3 kiddos. She's a mom to a boy, girl, boy, 11, 7, and 5. She's an avid golfer, and according to her, not good, but avid. So I appreciate that. She loves her dog, and her dog is actually older than her marriage. She's a foodie. She loves to travel, and if you find her outside, she is probably going to be at her best. And today she's a guest on Productive Joy. Kash, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You made me sound so much better than I am. I
My
love it.
friend, you are exceptional, and everybody here is going to learn something from you today. So why don't we start with getting people to want to keep listening? What would you say to us in like 30 seconds or less that's going to make people go, oh my gosh, I cannot miss this one? No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. You set the bar so high there. I would say that to keep listeners engaged, I am young, probably don't have all the answers, but I like to think that being young, being less seasoned, I do have something to offer and teach all that are willing to listen.
I think that's a perfect entry here. Okay, so why don't you start with baby Kash and bring us to current Kash, who's not a whole lot older than baby Kash. Tell us a little bit
That's
about
true.
your journey. What brought you to this point where you are today, and what's going to carry you further?
Yeah. So I started out, dreaming of having kids. I mean, I love my husband, but definitely in our earlier years, he was kind of like that driver to like getting me kids. And we had a lot of infertility having kids. We had 6 miscarriages before we had my first. And
Wow.
when I had my first, we definitely saw it as a blessing, and we're content with only having him, but there was still that little bit of a missing piece. But that whole journey really exacerbated wanting to stay home and be a mom until I was. And that doesn't minimize the fact of being a mom. I truly love being a mom, but finding my identity and my purpose for getting out of bed every morning was just not found in being a mom. And it caused a lot of rough waters in my marriage at the beginning because I was I was internally wrestling and feeling super ungrateful with the fact that I had this opportunity that my husband had awarded me. He really thought he was giving me what I wanted. And he would come home, dog tired from talking to people all day. And I had been, arguing with the tiny terrorist or, going through negotiation tactics to someone that couldn't communicate sanely with me, wanting to talk to an adult. And he was so checked out from talking to adults. And so, everything just kind of came to a head. And I found was like, I need to get back to work. And without a beat, he's like, if that's what you want. And so I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a business degree, very general. And so I took to Craigslist and just looked like what is out there for business administration. And Icon Foods had a opening for an executive assistant to a CFO. And for me in my mind, very type A, I'm like, well, I keep a tiny human alive all day. I'm managing my finances. I'm, operating the household needs. I'm managing calendars. Like, how hard can this be, right? And so I took it and I really fell in love with the finance side of things. And a lot of people think it's numbers, right? But I just fell in love with the idea of creating the story, creating the pictures, the numbers kind of jump out. And if you're a finance person, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But they kind of jump off the paper and start creating this story of what's going on. And I fell in love with that. And shortly after I started, we were about an $8 million company at the time. The CFO had some family issues that took her back to her home state. And I had built relationships with the founder and her over this short period of time. And she basically advocated and said, Cash could totally take on this department. And I still question her sanity and that. But I'm also super grateful because it was an opportunity that I know I would not have been awarded if I would have went and worked for a Fortune 100, 500 company. And so I took it and I ran with it, and I sat in that CFO role for almost 5 years and built my rapport within the company a little deeper, built my rapport within the industry quite deeper. And I built rapport with the board and ultimately was offered to take the helm last June. And very different role, but that's the short story of how I have gotten to where I am.
Okay, well, hold on. There are like 900 things that we could talk about in there. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know too many people who go from stay-at-home mom to executive assistant to CFO to CEO. Like that is not a linear path typically.
It's not. And there were, I took on a lot of the CFO responsibilities. At the time, we did have a CPA in place. So I had a little bit of a real estate, and I did go from executive assistant to accountant to controller to CFO. So I did make the natural title changes. It was just very accelerated, which was very intentional.
Which is pretty awesome. And you've done all of that to land you in this seat. And now you're sitting in this seat of CEO, which is not an easy seat to sit in, period. I have a dear friend who that is the seat she is sitting in. And every single day it is a new opportunity to learn and all the things. What are you learning in this space? Because you're still the CEO of your house too, right? Like my husband say, we're president and CEO and we change roles depending on the situation, but you're still running your home and
Yeah.
running this business. How are you keeping it all together?
It depends on who you ask. I don't know if I'm keeping it together fully, but I would say that the balance is definitely one of the biggest struggles. And you have to be strong enough to know when to say no. You've got to know that the people that you put in place are experts, right? Like I'm sitting at the helm, but I am in no way an expert in operations, in sales, in marketing, in QC. I have people there that are the experts there that are feeding me that information. And I'm, much like the board is advising me, I'm advising them and helping come to decisions that are best for departments in the organization as a whole. But I think that for me, it's really knowing that I can't do it all myself. I have a team that is in their respective seats for a reason, and trusting them in their processes, which is a type A person, isn't always easy. And I would say the same for, being at home. Our company is located in Portland, so I travel quite a bit back to Portland and constantly on the road with customers and supply chain partners. But when I'm home, I try to be home and really giving my time to where my feet are. And it's not always easy, but I would say you got to lean into the people. And just as much as I can't do the business side without my people there, I can't do the home side, the family side without an incredibly supportive husband that, keeps pieces moving when I can't.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so you said a lot of things just then. What I heard first, though, is to trust your humans, right? Put people in positions where they belong and then trust that they can do the job. And I think that's often missed, but to me, that's productive joy, right? Is when I am sitting in a seat where I am equipped to do the job and the people above and below me trust me to do said job. But we frequently run into the micromanagers of the world that think, oh, but I need to be doing the thing because I'm the boss or I'm in charge or I'm whatever. How do you prevent yourself? Because you admitted you're a type A person, right? How do you prevent yourself from inadvertently usurping somebody's opportunity to thrive in their position?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a challenge every day. I would say that it's something that that I actively work on. I think that it's a responsibility for me to give back because that's what was given to me. Our founder was very much not a micromanager, like to a fault, like very much like sink or swim. And I, even as a finance person, tend to be very much like microman, want to make sure everything's right because at the end of the day, decisions from the finance seat are very detrimental one way or another. And so it's something that I actively work on, but I also think too that when you put people in those roles, it's not just trusting that they can do their role, but it's also building the relational piece to it where you can have transparent conversations, right? Like I have one-on-ones with all of my direct reports weekly, and in those one-on-ones, it's what's working, what's not working. If it's working, I don't need to contribute anything. I can give you pieces on how it has worked for me in the past or, what roadblocks I've hit, but what's not working. And again, giving that feedback to say, I've done it this way, I've seen it this way. But when you build those transparent relationships where you can have the hard conversations and people aren't skirting around, you don't really need to micromanage because the transparency is already on the table, right? I think a lot of times people feel that need to micromanage because they're not getting the information that they feel like they need, whether it be they feel like it's being withheld or it is being withheld. But when you create those open, safe, transparent places, everything tends to come onto the table. And then I also have that peace of mind of like, you've got this handled. You don't need me. Thanks for the update. But so I think that building those relationships really plays a key piece into knowing they're experts, knowing that they're going to come to me before the building is burnt to a crisp. They're going to come to me as soon as the fire starts and either say, I've got it handled or SOS.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you've built trust and because you have given people reason to believe that you are going to take care of them. And it sounds like your founder helped you learn that, but you didn't come out of the womb thinking this is where you were going to land, right? Like you had the opportunity to end up where you are because of circumstances, because of all of that good stuff. What advice would you give to little Cash when you were younger that would and here's why I'm asking the question. I have 24-year-olds and they are both learning their way, right? That's what you do when you're 24. But what advice would you give them if, one of them is very comfortable and exactly where she needs to be, the other one is not sure and still searching? So what would you say to him if he feels like, what the heck?
Well, what's funny is I laugh about this all the time because my husband, all three of my kids are produced by my husband and I, and we are not a multi-family. But it is so fascinating to me that all three of these humans came from the exact same two pieces of DNA. And I look at all three of them like, how can you be three completely different humans with the same set of parents?
Well,
So
mine shared a womb, so mine are twins. Like, and they could not be any more different.
yeah, so like, I would say, I mean, I that piece just fascinates me, but very unconventional. I I I love the winnings. Who doesn't, right? But I actually love the losses, the hardships even more because that is really where you learn. And I say that our founder really was a non-micromanager, very much a like, here's the situation, sink or swim. And I'm so grateful for that because I really had to learn, right? Like I was thrown into the deep end and it was like, figure it out or someone else will. And so when we win, and I've used this analogy, if you've listened to a podcast from me before, I've used this analogy very, very frequently. when you win, you pop a bottle of champagne, you have a fancy dinner. I mean, like I can remember when I was appointed CEO, it was very much like that, right? Like we popped a bottle of champagne. I took my family out for, a 5-star dinner, and the next day was over, right? It was like life went on. But when I look at the times that were difficult, the transition from controller to CFO with really no one above me to help me through those times and really guiding through the roadblocks that they had, I remember that so much more than, the appointments or the wins, because you're forced to grow in those situations. So for me, I when it comes to that, I would say live in it, whether it is the win or the loss, in and learn, right? I'm a big advocate for journaling and reflection. I just think if you can use all of your senses, you really solidify some of those things. So 24, man, I wish I feel and look young, that I'm well past 24 and when I would get to go back to that age. But they're still so young, and I would say you have so much life to live. Enjoy it. Enjoy the wins, enjoy the losses. If you don't know what you want to do, figure it out, but take your time to figure it out, because life, while it is long, it is so short. And you should be so intentional with your time and what you're doing with it, and love what you're doing. And if you are not loving what you're doing, ugh, I challenge you to rethink some of the things your
My
life
God.
decisions.
Okay, so yes, yes, and yes. All of that not only resonates with me, but I know will with anybody who's listening. Our listeners are people who are seeking productive joy. They want to find a little bit more, and they want to experience it in the daily and not just by happenstance. So what you're saying is so true, and I love the idea of sitting in the losses. There's a great book called The Gap and the Gain, and the difference, right, is that we spend most of our time in the gap instead of going, oh my gosh, you know what? I learned so much from that complete screw up that I just did. Yay, good for me, right? Like, look what I'm learning. So, yeah, wise beyond your years, Cash. You definitely are. So, I have to ask you my favorite question because I think it's going to be a fascinating answer. And that's very simply, if you had to describe productive joy, how would you describe it?
Productive. I mean, kind of piggybacking on what I'm saying, it is you have to enjoy what you're doing. Again, like being a CEO, it is not for the weak of heart. I would say if that's something that you're aspiring to do, make sure that you understand why it is you're aspiring to do that. It brings me joy to not only like not only analyze how the business has gotten better, but be a part of building it to something that it can be. That is what I truly enjoy. I would also say that I enjoy the piece of watching other grow. I get so much satisfaction in seeing my people have the same opportunities I had, and seeing them kind of that light flicker on.
Yeah.
I did it. I did it because you didn't save me through it. You let me kind of work through that loss. And so I truly love what I do, not because of the title that I get to carry, but because of the impact that I get to have on the people behind me, maybe even the people ahead of me, in giving them a platform that this is possible. You can have it all. You can be a mom, you can be a wife, you can lead a company, and you can be an advocate for people that don't have all of the rights that we should and equality that we should. So if you're not happy doing it and you're doing it to check off what to do, I would advise that you question if you're doing what you're meant to be doing on this earth.
Mm. Gosh, there's so much power in everything that you just said. And what I'm really taking away is just to know your why, right? Like to be very intentional about knowing why you're doing what you're doing. And then everything else kind of falls into place once you can clearly articulate that. So I'm going to take a total left turn because I think it's going to be fun. So one of the things that you've mentioned is that you travel a lot for work. And I also travel a lot for work, as does my friend who's also a CEO. And what we have constantly commiserated about is the fact that work travel is not glamorous. There is nothing glamorous about it, like literally zero things. And so the last time, the thing that you saved me on, that I mentioned in your intro, was that I was traveling, and if I had sat and done the interview for our podcast as scheduled, I would have missed my flight. And I said thank you profusely for rescheduling this. What is your craziest work travel story that keeps you, humble and gets you to the point where you're like, yeah, not cute.
Actually, it has actually just recently. So I even as a CEO, I still try to be humble. I am a big supporter of Delta, but I'm no name dropping, of course. I do have status with them. They treat me very well. But I still book an economy ticket and I look forward to, the upgrades, which are very few and far between that they don't happen. And I was traveling on Valentine's Day back home. I was in Portland, and I live in a small-ish town in Utah. So we just have a regional airport. You do have to go to a big city to get to us. And so I was supposed to fly from Portland to Seattle to St. George. And my flight had an issue. So they had to redirect us. And so I had to fly to Seattle, to Salt Lake, to St. George. And my flight from Portland to Seattle was, of course, I got upgraded to first class. I had this cute little Valentine goodie bag, a handwritten personalized note from Delta to Kash. And I was like, this is great, right? Like living life. This is the things that all the people talk about, right?
Yes.
Like the perks, right? So I get to Seattle, and it could not have been a 90-degree turn if I couldn't make this up. The flight got canceled to Seattle, so they had to put me on a different flight. And I have a thing like I'll sit anywhere on the plane, but I have to have an aisle seat. I've had some experiences on the inside on small jets that will humble you too. But I was literally the last person on the plane at the very back at the window. And it was a 5 a.m. flight from Portland. So in Seattle, I got coffee, drank water, and I just sat next to two people that slept the whole time. And I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And I couldn't figure out how to wake them up because I'm that person that is not going to bother someone else. And of course, the flight attendants come by and like, can you get you anything? I'm like, no, I really just need to go to the bathroom. She's like, oh, okay, I'll come back when you go to the bathroom.
That wasn't what I meant, lady.
That's not what I meant, lady. So she actually came back about 10 minutes later and was like, did you go to the bathroom? I'm like, no. So of course she woke them up and they were disgruntled. And of course why didn't you just say something? You could have woken us up instead of getting this. I still had a whole, hour left to sit next to them. So I got off with that flight and was like, that humbled me real quick. You are no longer a CEO with perks. You are huffing it with the rest of the world with the economy.
Very back, that don't even recline because they're up against the wall.
No, yeah, no.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. No, I feel you. And people do say, oh, you get to travel for work. That's so cool. No, it's not. I mean, traveling would be lovely if you're going somewhere that you're choosing to go, but work related and you are running through the airport with the things and the stuff and oh my goodness, I totally understand.
All those things. And I used to be that person, oh, they get to travel, they get to go to all these places. And yeah, I'm on the road about 50% of the time now. And now it's just even my kids were like, you get to go to And they said they still think, and I'm like, it's really not that glamorous. Like, I'm good
No.
taking my bed.
I wake up and I go, what
Metaphorically.
room am I in? I don't know. Yes, I understand fully. Well, I just thought that that might be entertaining because I knew you had a good one and that was a good one. So you did not disappoint, Cash, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I was grateful to get where I needed to be, but yeah, it definitely brought me down to earth, which my husband will say I need often.
Yeah, those husbands, they can humble you real quick, can't they?
They do. They do. Kids as well.
Well, I am so grateful that we got to reschedule this, that we got to do this, and that I got to learn
Mm.
from you. It is clear to me that you not only love what you do, but that you bring other people along with you and alongside of you instead of doing unto them. And you are creating a space where people want to be and want to work and want to learn. And that's really special. So well done.
Thank you so much.
All right. So I do have some rapid fire questions. Are you excited?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought you might be. Okay. So question number one. What is your
Okay.
definition of fun?
Golf.
Oh, yes, you said you're an avid golfer. What's the favorite course you've ever played?
So we actually live on a course here in St. George called Green Springs, and that's where I spend most of my time. Beautiful course if you ever get here.
Okay, in St. George, Utah. Yes. Okay, next question. How do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
I'm showing up as my authentic self if I'm having fun. I mean, like if I'm watching a clock, like, oh my gosh, it's 5 o'clock, I get to be done. That is not my authentic self. My authentic self was, oh my gosh, it's 9 p.m. and I'm still doing what I'm yeah. So I would say when I'm not watching the clock and when I'm really just like living in the moment, that is my authentic self.
I love that. All right, how do you channel your best self on your worst days?
Oof. I would say that my husband is very much a sounding board for me. So when I need kind of grounding, leveling, I mean, as funny and as humorous as we say husbands are, he truly is really my sounding board and can bring me back down to earth. Maybe not as popular, but I'm also a lifelong Christian. So I find a lot of wisdom, hope, positivity, light and darkness from the Bible.
Yeah. Well, and you don't have to apologize for that. That's who you are. And I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Love it. And you know what? When that is part of who you are, then it just kind of comes out that part's obvious. Okay, last question. It's not going to be easy, but I know you can handle it. So, people by nature, their brains can only latch on to one major thing after a 30-minute conversation. And so, if people can only hold on to one thing, what's the number one thing you really want them to hold on to from today's conversation?
I would say live in the moment and don't compare your journey to anyone else's. We've talked a lot about how unconventional my journey was, how fast it was. But if you're not on that same timeline, if you are not moving in that same direction, it doesn't diminish what you are doing or the impact that you're making in the world or to those around you.
Mm, that's beautiful, Cash. Perfect. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for choosing to share your brilliance on Productive Joy. I know that everybody got a nugget of wisdom that they can take with them today. So thanks.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine.
All right. And friends, again, I mean, I'm telling you, these people are knocking it out of the park. We are so lucky to learn from them and grow with them. Make sure you visit the show notes. By the way, Cash, how would people find you? If somebody wanted to find you and say, I want to do what you did, how do I do it?
I would say LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. If you are not selling me something, I will always respond to you. You can also find me on our website at iconfoods.com. But yeah, I do what I do to connect with people and give them um, opportunities, wisdom, as small as mine might be, and hope. So if you connect with me from a place of I want to have a genuine conversation, I will always make time in my day. But if you were trying to sell me a service, I'd probably not respond.
Right? I know. It is starting to make me laugh how many you can tell are done by a bot somewhere. And you're like, yeah, when it leaves the brackets that say insert name here on it, I'm like, yeah, you're not going to get a response from me. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, listeners, you got another great one. Thank you so much for being here. As you know, my hope for you is that you find a little more productive joy in your day and that you figure out a way to turn fun into action.